So I really want this to be beneficial for all of you, so I could literally stand up here and talk about the way that I do the KPA, or you can tell me like what you're having issues with as you're KPAing people and hiring people, and we can just mastermind around that, and I can still give you my perspective. Which would you prefer?
Both.
Both? Okay. What are you guys having issues with as you're KPAing people and hiring people? Amy?
The KPA really helps you connect with people on an individual level. But at that moment, when you realize they are not the right fit for the job based on the KPA, that's what I struggle with the most. Like, I don't like letting people down.
Yeah.
And I want to help save everyone.
Yeah, so I can tell you how I handle those conversations. So if I get to, first off, so when I'm doing the KPA, I don't really talk production with them. Even as a buyer's agent, I'm not really talking production until I get farther into the KPA. I'm talking culture.
Yeah.
Because I can train production, I can't train culture. So, but as I'm going through the KPA, if, I get to the life story and I'm like, your goals just don't, that's a bad example, motivational interview. Your goals just don't align with mine or our businesses. Basically, I'm having that conversation. I'm just being as direct as possible, but I'm also telling them because of the time I've invested in them. And typically I think they're a great person if I've gotten that far in. I'm having them put me on their reference list so I can help them with their end goals. And then I'm asking, I'm going back to the portion of the thought process interview of that question where it says, if we don't get together on this job today, what will you do? And I'm looking at that. So if they say, I still want to be in real estate, I'm going to find a team that aligns with them. So maybe it's like, our team doesn't, but your team does. I would come to you and be like, hey, Amy's hiring. What do you think about this person? And kind of digest the KPA with you. Granted, if they're just like a really, really bad fit, I don't have a hard time having tough conversations. So I just kind of rip that Band-Aid off. But I always do my hard conversations over the phone, never in an email, never via text, even if that's their preferred communication style. Just because I feel like I can read them a little bit more over the phone or their voice. And I've also done it to where after I get done with that motivational interview, I don't want to move them forward. I'm having that conversation in person with them. Does that help?
Yeah.
Answer that question? Anybody else?
Through the different steps, how long should you be spending on each? Because I have 8 steps here.
So I typically time block an hour to an hour and a half for each. Granted, some of them could go longer. So the verification may not take as long as the thought process interview. When I've gone through CV career visioning, if you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. It's the class that goes through the whole KPA. They teach just to let them talk, and that's literally what I do. I don't stop them. I let them kind of digest, and then I'll ask a follow-up question. But if they want to talk to me for an hour and a half, I let them talk for an hour and a half. Because ultimately, I'm just going to get to know them more. I've never had to cut it. I've never had somebody that just wants to keep going, but maybe that's what you have to do. Because I know you said this morning you took an hour and a half just for the verification piece.
I'm only on step 1, so it's like, oh my gosh, how much time is it gonna take to go through the rest of it? Because I don't know.
How, in your verification piece, were you asking some of those probing questions of their
Yeah.
production, things like that?
Why that statement wasn't a 10?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're just talking, I guess, for a buyer's agent. That's
Mhm.
good though, if they're wanting to digest all that.
It was good information.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I would just maybe see how long the next piece is going to take. The thought process and the motivational interview for me are usually typically longest. One, because thought process, you're asking all of those open-ended questions. So there's 45 open-ended questions if you haven't gone through the thought process with somebody. I don't skip any questions when I do that. Ask every single question. They're each there for a reason. And then the motivational interview is my favorite part of the entire KPA. It's when you find out if people are going to be vulnerable with you. And I personally love that. When we go into the motivational interview, if I can make them cry, It's a win for me. But yeah, so I would just say see how long the next one's gonna take, but as long as there's still a culture fit as you're going through, I would just say don't waste your time if they're not. Lincoln?
Yes, it's not as much directly on the KPA, just more hiring in
Yeah.
general, but like for me, trying to figure out the right timing for hiring and just kind of, yeah, knowing when that is, because I've got like a lot of random tasks that I think somebody could do, but in my mind, it's like, is it enough to hire part-time or full-time, and trying to figure out that, I guess, right timing and for somebody to come on.
Yeah, so when we, on our team, kind of how we figure out if it's the right time, one, we look at our P&L. So, do you look at your P&L?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at your P&L, and if there's a, I don't want to call it a gap, but if your P&L is telling you can hire. So like we have our budget built out, and so in our budget, we have our expense categories, and one of them is literally salaries. So I don't know if you've gone to that extent of like building out your salaries, but if my salaries portion, I have an opening, and in my P&L, like I'm have an excess, that's how I know. And two, leverage. So I always do like the dollar per hour test of like, is it worth my dollar per hour to spend time on this? And if it's not, maybe it's worth trying part-time and then moving them up to full-time. We've done that quite a few times where we're not sure if we need a full-time person. So we just kind of test it out and then move them into full-time.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is there a big benefit of just going straight into full-time? Like do that if you can, or is it usually good to try part-time first, see if they're the right fit?
We always try full-time first. I think we've literally only done part-time maybe once or twice. One reason being our culture is so unique that having them in the office full-time every day, they're gonna buy into our vision really quickly because of our culture. And I know your guys' culture. I feel like that would be the same thing for you guys.
Right. Makes sense.
I'm part-time as an admin for Elise Riley, and I feel like being part-time, there is a little bit of a disconnect because like I'm off on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it's like, okay, now we have to play catch up. So it might be nice to adjust a schedule, even if they're part-time, maybe just have them there a little bit every single day so that that's just what I'm running into.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you don't have them in office every day, like I know some days just being out of office, like with expansion, I'm out of office quite often now. I have no idea what the heck's going on when I get back to the office the next day.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still working, I'm just not in office every day. So, yeah.
Sam, is everybody in your office in-house, or do you have any virtual partners that you put through this process?
Everybody in our office is in-house. We've tried the virtual route between like admin and ISA, OSA, and it's just really hard.
We kind of have virtual, but they're still like.
Oh, Val, yeah.
We have Val and we have Jess, but
That's true.
they work, I mean, they're connected with us every single
Yeah.
day. So even they're not.
It's not through like a company though.
It's not
So
through a
we don't do virtual through like Cyberback or anything like that. They're literally employed by the Aris Network. And they're on like, most of them are either on a Zoom throughout the day, or they're doing like daily check-ins to where they still fell apart. Because if not, like I could see them, like we just had an ISA OSA that she was in Colorado and she was like virtual. She was employed through us, but it was so hard for her to connect with our team because she was so far away.
On the job fit verification, are you able to weed out many people? Because I haven't looked at many of them, but they're the ones I have looked at. I mean, they're pretty positive. So can you kind of tell if you're looking at a few of them that it's like, this is not.
So typically where I weed out the most of my people is the resume check and the phone call before.
Okay.
Honestly, like if I'm bringing them in for verification, I usually don't weed them out till thought process. Because usually in thought process, they're telling me something about like, as I dive into their work history of why did you switch jobs 10 times in a year? This is why. But usually I will take the majority of my people out with the resume check and the phone interview. So, and I put things into my, like when they have to apply to where they basically like have to follow directions. So if it's an admin, they have to write me a paragraph in an email it to me directly, and it has to be one paragraph of why you think you would be a good fit for the position. If it's over one paragraph, I automatically cut them out because I asked for a paragraph. So it's really about seeing if they're detailed enough to see that statement in there of I need one paragraph. ISA, OSAs usually have them cold call me the day of their interview, or somebody on our team, usually Josh gets cold called. I'll have them cold call me and just to see if they'll do it. Like if they don't cold call me, I immediately I don't do their verification. They have to cold call me the morning of their verification. If they don't do that cold call, I cancel the verification. So adding extra things in there, like I know it may seem a little harsh, but you find out really quickly if they're willing to put the work in to be on your team. Anything else? Who is hiring right now? What are you hiring for, Amy?
Really, well, administrative, but more like ops manager and master organizer.
When you said buyer's agent. Anybody else hiring? Ish. Cool. All right, as you're going through the KPA, what are you, so this is my KPA. So if you've never seen a KPA before, so what it does is it takes my role that I sent the KPA for, and it has high impact, medium impact, and low impact traits. So it says based off of my personality that I'm a high fit for director of operations. The high impact traits are rapid problem solving, responsiveness, and assertiveness. So you want them to be like the average is between this gray bar, but it's not a bad thing if they're not average. That just means based off of their personality, they're not naturally assertive. When I go into my verifications, depending on what the role is, I personally appreciate people to be a little bit assertive. I myself am assertive. I'm pretty black and white. So when doing one-on-ones and stuff with them, I like to see people like be assertive. But depending on what you're hiring for, like Amy, you may not want somebody to be assertive.
I just didn't need to be assertive,
Yeah.
actually.
So it just depends. Yeah. So it just depends. Like me, I'm naturally assertive. So that's what I kind of look for when I'm doing these, because I want people to give me the pushback that I need to help me grow. But yeah, so these would be the high impact traits. So I really focus on the high impact traits when I'm verifying these, because those, I would say for this role, are the most important personality traits because they're the high impact traits. So if they were like low on rapid problem solving, I would really dive into that and digest that with them and ask those probing questions in their KPA verification or throughout the process. Does that make sense? Okay. Who's verified a KPA before?
You had a question on there. It said, where are you finding candidates?
Oh, yeah, so I have job ads on Indeed, on Glassdoor, on Handshake. Handshake is, it's for local colleges. So you can create an account, it's free. Go on there and you can add schools in your area. So like we have Missouri State, SBU, Evangel, Drury, yeah, whatever schools are in our area. I've lost my train of thought for a second. And so I post all of our jobs on there, and we've gotten quite a bit of candidates, and they will also post through like Missouri State. They have bulletins that they'll post your jobs on it for you as well. Career fairs, get involved in our local career fairs, whether it's the Missouri Expos. Missouri State has one coming up in a couple weeks that we're going to. Also, we have these, I should have brought one with me. We have these really cute, we're hiring cards that we pass out to literally anywhere any of our team members go in our community. If we have a great server, if I go to like the car dealership and I'm buying a new car, I literally hand them out wherever we go. Our entire team does. We incentivize our team because it is like just the community right now. I feel like it is hard to find really great people to hire. we incentivize our team to bring in candidates to us. So if they bring, especially ISA, OSAs, if they bring somebody into us and they stay for 90 days, they get a bonus. And then at their 1-year anniversary, they get a bonus for that person as well. So no matter what you're hiring for, you could do that. But as they're finding great agents that they're working with or whatever, they're more apt to bring me their name and be like, hey, this person's really awesome. I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else that.
Social media a lot.
Yeah, social media. We, in all of our newsletters that go out to our clients, so we send out a monthly newsletter, we send out a closing newsletter every month. It has a little hiring blurb on there. So they can literally just click on it. It takes them to a job form and they can fill out the job form if they're interested or if they know anybody that's interested in our organization.
Any of our events, we just did a dial day
Mhm.
where it was a conversation that we talked to about past clients and some of our SOI that we knew weren't necessarily doing anything in real estate. Someone that just bought a house like a week ago, they don't need to sell it probably, hopefully. So we're talking, that's kind of a conversation we're having with them.
What's SOI mean?
Sphere, so the people that you're connected with. They know.
So literally, if you have a database, like
Yes,
get it out to your database. Some of my best hires have come from referrals from our past clients. So they're more than willing to give you great people. And like we've had like when they call me, I have the conversation up front, like, hey, thank you so much. I'll let you know how this is going. And typically they don't have hard feelings if I don't hire somebody that they refer to me.
Mhm.
So, and I always send them like a little thank you card in the mail for, hey, thanks so much for sending this person to me.
It's probably the hardest thing to refer friends,
Mhm.
just because it's the hardest thing to fire friends. We had somebody that we hired that was a good friend of mine. Sam and I actually both knew her, and within 3 weeks, we had to let her go. So it's kind of weird, but it's part of it. I'd rather give that person the opportunity to at least have an opportunity.
Anybody else have anything they want to talk about?
When you are looking for somebody, are you going through a lot of applications, a lot of hires for one position? I'm sure it is different for different jobs, but because for me, it's like a lot of times I've hired some friends or people I know, and it's just, I know you, we'll try it out and it doesn't work so well. So like, do you filter through a lot or is it usually pretty quick?
So yes and no, depending on the role. So like admin role, yes, my last admin role that I hired, I got over 100 applications. From that 100, I narrowed it down to about 10 people. From that 10, I only took 3 to group interview. So
I think one good tip too, if you are listing on like Indeed or those places, give them something that they have to do. Kind of like what you said, you have to, they have to cold call you the day of their interview or their whatever. And basically have them make sure that it says in there, like, please email me a PDF of your resume, because you will be baffled at how many people do not listen to instructions or do not read a full job interview or a job description. So that's always a good thing to think of too, because that'll weed out a lot of people. Like they can't even follow instructions.
Yeah, on every one of our Indeed ads, Sam has that. Indeed has a resume on there, but it doesn't give you everything. But it really is more than anything like, can you follow directions?
yeah.
And it says, if you're interested, apply here, but then also email Sam Davis at sam.davis. And then if they don't email you, they're an automatic no, I mean, it helps you weed them out real quick, but it also, you'll still get plenty. I think when we hired Sam, I want to say we had 67 before we shut it off. And we're like, all right, we're going to funnel through these real quick before we open it back up. And then, we did phone interviews with everybody, like 5-minute phone interviews. So.
Yeah, and on the phone interview, when I'm having them, like when I'm talking to them about the KPA, I give them a time limit for the KPA as well. So every person that I talk to has 24 hours to take the KPA or a personality assessment, whatever you're sending them. So whether it's a disc, whatever it may be, they have 24 hours. If they don't get me that within 24 hours, or they don't call me and say, hey, I got stuck at work, yada, 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 they're automatically out as well. And I do that because I've had people, before I started saying 24 hours, I've had people take like 2 weeks to take the KPA, and I'm already through my hiring process by that time. I don't, like, I take my time with the hiring process, but I do go through it pretty quickly. So like a day, so say I was hiring an admin, I would send the KPA like on a Monday, I would get it back by Tuesday, Wednesday, they would start coming in. So I would do verification and thought process in the same day. So I'm time blocking probably 2 to 2.5 hours for that. I'm doing verification, taking a 10 to 15 minute break, coming back for thought process. And then Friday, I'm bringing them back in for life story and motivational interview. So then the next week I can do group interview and we can be done with it. So I typically like, I have ads going all the time, but I will bring in, like, ask Josh, like a whole week of my life will be hiring and all day will be dedicated to that because I want to get them in pretty quickly.
Not only that, it's all, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
It's just setting that expectation too, by giving them those timeframes, because when you do get hired, you are expected to hit certain expectations.
And it's a process to go through you can do a part of it with me if you want to demo it, but, it's a process, but in order to get through it, you have to push. And we found out that if we do this in a slower time frame, people fall off, and they're probably really high quality candidates because they're making it through to the next step. But you're talking, was it 6 steps?
Yeah, there's about 6 1-hour steps in
So
there.
if you break it up into 6 1-hour interviews, realistically, that could be 4 or 6 weeks. Not many people are gonna hang on unless this is their dream job for 4 to 6 weeks, right? You can, right? You can get lucky, and we have, but we also lost a lot of what I would say was probably pretty high quality candidates just because it just took too long.
It took me 6 weeks to get hired.
It's a freaking process, but it's an amazing process. It's
It
just
is.
long.
I've been here for 3.5 years now.
We wish you would go, but
So since you guys are doing such an extensive process, do you guys feel like that helps your turnover rate? Like you guys are really getting, or do you guys still have like, is it just kind of thinned?
We do not have a high turnover rate on our team. I mean, our highest turnover rate would be ISA OSA, and a typical ISA OSA lasts 6 to 8 months. We're probably at a 1.5-year turnover rate. So, but yes, it does, because I'm being very clear with what our vision and our mission is. And I'm taking that time to really digest all that, because it's a win-win for both of us. And I literally, every call that I have with them or time that we sit down, I'm telling them that, like, hey, I know this process is extensive, but I want it to be a win for both of us. And I'm restating our vision and our mission every time they come in.
I'd say our turnover is probably pretty low, even in the ISA role.
Oh, yeah.
Compared, like, in the ISA role, they're in and out, right? If they're in for less, within 90 days, it's a high turnover regardless. Once they hit that 90 days, that's when our average definitely jumps up, and it's a year and a half. And we have 3 on our team that have been there for 3 years. So, but our admin, all of our agents won't go through like the exact KPA process, but we go through the majority of it. It's a little different when we talk about someone's thought process with an agent, because it comes up in normal conversation that we have with them probably before we start this. We don't usually hire somebody unless I know, like for agents purposes, we don't usually go after somebody that we know that we're not already aligning with. So if it's somebody that's like, man, I really don't have these aspirations to grow very much, we're probably not going to take you through the KPA process. But
If you're hiring a new agent, though, I would take them through this. We don't typically hire brand new agents on our team. No rhyme or reason for that. We just don't. So if you are hiring a brand new agent, you've never had a relationship with them, I would definitely take them through this. But typically the agents on our team, we have relationships with already.
So the agents that you already know, like, and trust,
Mhm.
which portions of the KPA would you hit with them?
So agents that we know, like, and trust, the verification and the thought process comes up naturally. We're doing life story, motivational, and group interview with them. So we're going over goals and kind of like what's happened in their life to digest all of that. That's important because, if you have like somebody that's been in trouble with the law or whatever, it's really important to go through life story with them, because they are a representation of your team the moment you bring them on. So, but yeah, so that's what we're doing with with agents.
I think that specifically we ask a few of these questions.
Yeah, they just come up naturally, and most of them come up in group interview. So like, my favorite question is, who are the 3 most people you most like, admire, respect, and why? My absolute favorite question. And then the last one of, if we don't get together on this job, what will you do next? I think that's really important to know as well. Because if they don't, depending on their age or what role it is, if they don't know what they're going to do next, I wouldn't say it's a red flag, but it's just like, okay, like, why did you choose us then? If you don't really know what your next steps are. And I take that as, if we don't get together on it, I can help them make that next move. So if it is that they're a really great person, they just may not be a culture fit for us with our culture, but they're an amazing agent, they may be a culture fit for Wim and his culture. So I like that question because I can, and we have every single person that I take through the process, if they get that far and we don't get together, one, I'm either building a bench with them. So like right now I have 4 admin on my bench that have been on my bench for over a year because I'm just not ready to hire yet. But I know when I'm ready to hire, I can call them and they literally will come back and just go through the process again with me. And I have just a MailChimp for my bench. I just have a MailChimp and I'm just touching them monthly. So sending them a letter or an email saying, hey, just thinking about you, still here. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, do you prospect for new agents? But you kind of answered that because you said typically you guys do not usually go after agents that have been around for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that we're really prospect for agents. It just comes naturally. All of our team is really highly involved in the market center. So all of our leadership team is, so it just kind of comes naturally. We're not like striking at anybody's agents. It just comes naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, one of my favorite things is communicating with other agents. I asked everyone on Wolf last year for 6 months. It was part of my role to follow up with every closing that we had to the co-broker, say thanks, see if they're happy, whether it's an opportunity for KW or if they're, if they're another brokerage or come over here and join our team or look at our team or look what we have different. And more than anything, it's just seeing if they're satisfied with where they're at. Generally speaking, the people that we hire on our team though, I don't know that we prospect for them. It's usually that the conversation comes to us and it kind of, it goes to there, or goes from there. I think that generally speaking, if somebody's unhappy, especially in the agent role, but they want to be on a team, they're going to start conversations that seem very nonchalant. But if you dig in a little bit deeper, you know that there's a reasoning behind it. No one's coming and asking. I mean, I'll use Tani as an example. She stopped us at Mega Camp at the movie theater and was like, you guys have so much fun together when you're here. And we're like, yeah, that's a weird conversation to have. And then just turned into a relationship over 6 months, where there's a change made. So.
Yeah, and that's why like with our clients too, when we are ready to hire, we get so many referrals, is because we make our culture very present. We make it present in the community. We make it present on our social media page. I know Amy, like you are very similar in that you do fun things you love on your clients. Your clients appreciate that, and they're going to, if you were to reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm looking to hire, you'd probably get a galore of references because.
Yeah, I've actually, so I have a lot of clients that have reached out to me about things and I've ended up placing them with other teams just because I haven't had, but I still get them involved with KPA and help them figure out which team might be a good fit for them. So I do that a lot. I just haven't had the room to hire.
Yeah, it's a great way to grow your downline too, if you are an agent. Like I know for me personally, because I do all of our hiring, if they don't end up being a fit for our team, they're probably in my downline because I took the time to meet with them. I took the time to show them what KW is and the vision of KW and the values that we have here.
On that point right now, you have K-score too. So if they're not licensed, you can help them get set up through licensing and all of that stuff to where, I mean, it becomes a little bit of legwork for you on the front end because you get to be their advisor, but it's definitely worth it.
Anybody else?
Whenever you set up the KPA, it's for a specific position. What if you come across somebody that's really talented, but you're really not sure what their position is. What KPA would you have them do?
Usually I just send it for agent single if I'm not sure, so like a single agent. And then if you don't get one of these, you can. So it doesn't automatically come to you, but it'll give you a job match report. So like this is mine. So if I sent it for agent single, it would tell me where they were. But for every role that we have within our organization, it'll tell you where they fall. So like me, literally I'm the highest score for a team buyer's agent, but that's what it is.
Not gonna happen.
That's not going to happen, no. But it'll like break it down for you. So like what they're a high fit for, what they're a low fit for. So like me, I'm a medium fit for floor manager, director, manager / engineering, which makes complete sense. And listing assistant, which is funny.
But you can just ask us for which report you want. Like we can pull any report based on a job.
Yeah, so like when Ashley, I get the results, I literally email Ashley back and I'm like, send me everything. Like I want to see it all. And they can send this to you. So just ask them for it.
If you hire, or if you interview somebody or do the KPA with them as like an individual agent, can you get a different report? Can they change the report afterwards without them taking the KPA again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they can just put it in, they know how to do
Just
that.
interprets the results to
Mhm.
that other
Yeah.
report, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so if I didn't want this to be for DOO, I wanted it to be for Director of Innovation and Technology, they could literally just enter it into their system and it would show the high, medium, and low impact traits for that. So.
Did you say that is part of the KPA, like
Mhm.
it's in there?
Yeah, it doesn't come with the results to you. You just have to email the Market Center and they'll send it to you.
That's for the job match.
Or job match report, yep. And the only two things that I look at when when I KPA people are this and the actual KPA job fit report. I don't look at their personal fit report. I don't look at anything like that, just the job fit and the job match report. Using the wrong mouse, that's what I. For those of you that have done this, where do you think, like what section do you think you struggle with the most?
Can you do a example of one of those questions?
On which section, just the verification or the thought process or
Verification.
Joshua?
Joshua, you're up.
I have Josh's actual KPA, so
Last time Sam verified mine, she laughed at me, guys. She probably didn't laugh at me, she laughed with me, I guess.
So is that portal, that's Rachel's portal that you just, okay, gotcha. Okay, that'd be nice to have a portal.
We don't give it out very often at all.
I think
I honestly don't know how I have it. I think she logged into my computer at one of the like CV classes. Don't change the password, Nicole.
Okay. Wait,
I send out last week I sent out 15 KPAs. So having to email Ashley and stuff like that was like a pain in the butt.
they were
so-
very probably.
Yeah, they were
we
probably,
give you everything. You ask for it, we will give it to you.
Oh, yeah, you don't need this, yeah.
all right. So, do you just want to pick one for me to verify, Wham?
Anytime, any of them. I was just wanting to see how you
Go through like
through a couple.
a couple of the verification questions, just the first couple.
Yep.
Yeah, those are good. That's a good way.
Sam knows me well enough now where she was reading this when she was like, we were practice verifying it and she started giggling halfway through. She's like, don't even answer. This is perfectly you, like 100%, you know? I was like, oh, okay.
It does kind of scare me how accurate it is.
Yeah.
I've noticed that it's either like perfectly accurate, not perfect, but like really, really close or completely opposite.
opposite.
Yeah, because somebody was just like throwing mud at
Yeah,
a wall and
thumbs
seeing
up.
if it would stick. Yeah.
All right. All right, Josh, we are gonna verify it. This is based on your vocabulary. So on a scale of 1 to 10, you're gonna tell me how accurate the statement is.
Okay.
1 being not at all to 10 being most accurate thing you've heard about yourself.
Okay, perfect.
It's okay for them all to be a 10. It's based on your personality. Josh can synthesize ideas from broad knowledge and concepts. He learns new ideas easily and quickly, and in new environments, he can readily pick up information, social roles, priorities, and culture. In changing situations, Josh can rapidly recognize the change and learns new rules fast.
Yeah, say it's a 10
Okay.
for sure. I feel like I'm pretty decent at picking up kind of new surroundings. I tend to listen and then engage. So I'm trying to learn as I'm doing it. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty close.
And then I always ask the probing questions depending on what probing question it is. So just because I like to know, tell me about the most recent skill you had to acquire, either as part of your job or outside of work. How steep was the learning curve for you, and what parts did you feel were easy to learn?
Well, we just merged teams. So there was a lot of, I think kind of learning like social rules and kind of like hierarchical chains and just in general, a new environment. So it was a pretty steep learning curve pretty quickly. Quite honestly, we had as little time as possible to learn. So really focused on spending time with each individual person in each group in our team to try to learn how they best wanted to be interacted with, coached, trained, mentored, anything like that. So I'd say that was probably the most recent and pretty excessive.
How long did it take you to feel like you were up to speed?
Well, we're at about 2 months and 28 days right now. So still working. No, I mean, honestly, yeah, I think it's never ending, but got the gist of it pretty quick and then, just keep diving in and keep digging it every day.
All right. So the whole time I'm doing this, I'm literally writing down like everything he's saying. Notes, circling, like, so anything that he like appear that he touched on vocabulary wise.
Social rules.
Yeah, social rules. Yeah, all of that thing. So I'm circling, underlining.
Starring, highlighting,
Yeah.
whatever. The things that Sam and I interview very similarly, obviously, but the things that person says or that they attach to in that question, or if they say that's not me, right? Circle it, make a little note, or if they're like, yeah, that's me 100%, star those words that they say, so you can remember why it was a 10. If it's a 10, it's a 10. That's fine, but you want to know what made it stick out so much in their head that they're like, holy shit, yeah, that's me. Or crap, sorry, recorded, forgot.
All right, this one's on your optimism. Josh likes regular interaction with people. However, he tends to maintain a healthy skepticism about situations and has the tendency and ability to anticipate things that might go wrong.
I am naturally skeptical. I'm very much an optimist, like a broad range optimist, but I would say the first thing, if somebody comes to me with an idea or a plan, I'm probably looking for what could go wrong. Not that if Wim had an idea for me, I don't think that Wim's idea is wrong. I'm just looking at how it could go wrong. It's not that I don't trust anybody or everybody. It's just that I've been burnt when I just hurry up and say yes. So I would say that's pretty accurate. I like to be a skeptic, not just to be a Debbie Downer, but just to make sure I can see things around the corner. So I'd say it's probably 10. 9 or 10.
I'm gonna keep going. All right, rapid problem solving. Josh is able to deal quickly with new problems that arise. He can identify overarching themes and patterns from information.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's pretty accurate. The only thing would be the quickly, kind of like I mentioned in the last answer. I like to interrogate items. So if I see a new problem that arises, I like to try to understand the angles or all angles of it and try to get it. So I would say it's probably an 8 or a 9 on this one, just because I don't want to be too quick to cast judgment or to cast a correction. I want to understand everything. And I really try to focus that time on learning the overarching themes or the reasons or the patterns as to why. But I would say probably an 8 or a 9.
Awesome. Give me a couple of examples when you felt like you were putting fires out at work. What kind of problems were being thrown at you, and how did you come up with the solutions?
Yeah, I think we see fires quite often between like transactions. When you do the transactions, you're gonna have issues come back. Like right now, I got an email last week. House messed up. clients said they did some stuff that hadn't been done or vice versa, all sorts of, my first thing was to really understand the entire transaction. So wasn't to figure out, or, wasn't just to like spit an answer out, but it was really to dig in and figure out what caused the fire, more than just hey, the toilets aren't flushing. It was really to dig into and figure out why. And I think that's really the only reason that it's not like up in the question where it says Josh is able to deal quickly. I don't want to like harp too close or, lean too closely to the being quick. I like to take my time a little bit and dig in.
Can you give me an example when you did have to react quickly?
Yeah, I think that when you're in this environment that we're in right now with this market, I tend to deal with listings, so I'll deal with the listing. So let's say we have 5 offers come in. One of them is a phenomenal offer, and you've already said you're going to review offers at a certain time, or your client's already decided that. But then you get this one that's like, all right, it's cash, it's 50 grand over, there's no appraisal, no inspection, all this stuff. How do you make that decision, right? I generally like to do what's right by those other people and try to at least alert them that's already made an offer. Anybody that has showings, Sam will reach out to them a lot. And we try to be proactive as quickly as possible. I let my client make the decision ultimately. It's not my decision to be made. I just try to inform them with every bit of evidence and every bit of reasoning that we have. So again, it's as quick as it can be. It's not usually a gut decision. I only like gut decisions when I'm taking tests or something like that. I usually like to interrogate stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, so.
Does that make sense, how it works?
I think what I had done whenever I did it is I just went one sentence at a time
Oh, yeah.
and had her do,
Yeah, and I think that,
that would make it go quicker almost.
scroll down to the paragraph.
Yeah, so I will do, this.
You know what paragraph
Yeah.
I'm talking about?
So I will do that if I read it the first time and they're like having a hard time breaking it apart, like in their head.
Yeah.
But if not,
Some of these questions get long and I'll get hung up on one sentence and that person's answering something else over here. So then I will go back because I've done that so much.
So are you talking about this one?
Yeah, so this here, I don't know if she still does it or if she's changed it, but we usually will say, hey, just read the whole thing, but then really break it up too, right? And if they, we make them circle or mark out. So circle what they like, mark out what's not perfect. We've had people literally circle the whole page. It's because the test is kind of weird, but they will break this up into paragraphs at the very least. And then more times than not into sentences or even like phrases within that sentence, 2 or 3 words. Ability to work with people in a fast moving environment. Somebody may focus on fast moving and they're like, well, I don't want to get left behind, right? Or whatever. So we encourage people to break it down as they need to. And it goes along with those questions where Sam will be asking them, and you can watch somebody's eyes glaze over real quick. When you're reading a paragraph, try to pay attention. Don't just dig into your paper and read it and then look up and that person will be gone. They'll be in another planet. They don't know what you just asked. Looks like they just had a bender that they went on because it's a lot, right? And if you're asking somebody about their life and who they are, they'll freeze real quick on it.
Yeah, that's why too, like he said, I like to have them read this and have them like X out anything they don't agree with or circle what they do. So that way I can see what they think about like themselves. So like I see the word aggressive here. So when I did this with Josh and Wes, when I was being hired, it literally had that word in there. And I immediately was like, oh, that's really negative. I don't want them to think I'm aggressive because I'm not. Like I'm not aggressive. I am assertive, not aggressive. So like I marked that word out.
Yes.
And I like them to mark out or circle things because then I can ask them about them. So they can be like, hey, you're not an aggressive, so you're saying you're not an aggressive individual who will strive to make a strong impact on the environment.
Yeah.
Is that true? And knowing this about Josh, I would say he's not naturally aggressive, but when it comes to making a strong impact, he is aggressive because I know him. But if I didn't know these people that I was, interviewing, it would be really key for me to have them do that.
And I've done this before and I talked to Sam about it. I'm sure she's probably gone through it, but there's be people that are just run through it and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is all great. I will go back through and say, hey, give me at least 3 things that you're circling and 3 things that you're Xing out. And if nothing's getting X'd out, then give me a few more of the circles as to why this is so perfect. Because I want to see like specifics, not just the whole broader sentence. I mean, like the whole thing's good, don't get me wrong, but it's like, what are the actual parts? Because
Yeah.
there may be 5 things in this entire page that go, holy crap, that's so perfect. And that person's going, this is all right.
Yeah, I also have them rate it too, because if they rated an 8, but they didn't cross out anything, why is it an 8? Because if it was perfect, it would be a 10. So go back through it, read it again, or just, we discuss it. I like to talk I don't like to talk. I want them to talk as much as possible during this. Because that just literally, they just will digest everything to you.
Yeah.
And I like to hear all the things.
When we just went to CV, the biggest thing I took away from David Rosso's talking is he had to learn, and it's something that I have to learn, or I'm learning, is that when you're asking these people questions and they're trying to answer you, don't say, do anything. It's so natural. If you're a natural helper, right? If you're a natural like trainer or coach or mentor, your natural desire is to, if Sam's struggling on a sentence or struggling on a word to like come up with, you want to give it to him. No, right? It's so natural to do that. I get it. Like I am that person, so I'm taking full blame, but.
Yeah, it's also really natural and hard for me on this of when they talk about something that I can relate to. So like when I'm asking them like more so the thought process interview of like, who are the 3 people you most like, remind, or respect, and why? And if they say their mom, like I automatically am like, oh, me too. Like, why do you love your mom? So you know what I mean? Like it just, I want to give them my opinions on things, or like how long would you fail before you succeed at a task? That when I usually am like, let me assert my opinion because I have opinions on this too.
Yeah.
So I have to keep my thoughts to myself and let them talk, because I have found that was probably the biggest takeaway from David that I took away as well, that when I do talk, they want to stop talking because they want to hear what I have to say. And what I have to say does not matter. Like they don't care about my mom. They may, but they don't.
Well, it's also like your body language too. Like I'm a big, like I'm in here, I am nodding because I am understanding what you're saying, and I am like, maybe not agreeing, but I'm like comprehending it.
Yeah.
But that's also hard too, because I know that they've said that as well. Like, don't be so like aggressive with.
It's natural for you to encourage them and be like,
Yeah.
yeah. But as soon as they say something you don't like, it's very clear because you stop doing that.
Yeah.
So you may not notice that you didn't make a face, you didn't give them RBF, you didn't do anything like that. But the fact that you're not nodding and going, yeah, that was the same thing, right? You might as well just rolled your eyes at them because they can see the difference in it. I think I think what I'm going to have to do is start calling myself out on it, right? Like at the beginning of the interview, be their friend, make that relationship real quick, and then say, listen, I'm going to have to be completely unemotional, because if I'm not, I'm going to start inserting myself in things that I don't need to say or do, or giving you my opinions or making you feel good or bad about your answer. So now my goal is to say and do nothing and be completely like poker face the whole time, because otherwise you're going to see something. And I think the only way for me to not give that to them is just to say, hey, here it is, because don't think that I hate you for the next 45 minutes or whatever.
I think I'm gonna have to do that too, because my
I
natural
struggle.
instinct is to like make people feel comfortable with me and try to do that. And I remember when we were hiring our ISA, I'm just like, yeah, everything you guys just called out, I did. I'm like, oh God.
It's either like I have a really bad habit of making them feel comfortable,
Yeah.
or I'm like, I'm over this already.
Right.
And I will let them know that too without meaning to.
That's me.
Or-
I don't really get emotional with people, so
Or like walking, I mean, I'll leave an interview, like I've done that, but we'll end one short, but I try not to like encourage anymore.
yeah, I agree. And I always try to like, they are being really vulnerable with you. And if they're not used to being vulnerable, like I know when I did this with Wes and Josh, I am not typically a vulnerable person. Like I went way out of my comfort zone for this interview. And a lot of people are. Like if you go to the corporate world, they're not doing this with you. Like my last job in the corporate world, I had one interview and I got offered the job. And it was like, here you go, you start on Monday type of thing. So nobody's doing this with them. And so that's why every interview I'm re-explaining why we're going through this process and why it's so important for us. And I literally bring our mission, vision, values for not only Keller Williams, but for Veris Network with me to every interview. And at the end of every interview, I'm like, hey, if you do not think you are a fit for this position, you're not gonna hurt my feelings, just tell me. Because we're both taking a lot of time to go through this. And you gain that respect really quickly with people when you're just upfront and honest with them.
I think there's one time that I will encourage these people to like give more is during that thought process or during that life story, because they're so not used to being vulnerable. Sometimes you'll get 1 or 2 questions in and it's like, oh yeah, I want to make more money for my family. It's like, all right, let's have a real conversation, right? Don't give me the politically correct answer, right? Like give me real conversation. More times than not, on a high quality individual that there's gonna be emotion shown. There's gonna be tears or there's gonna be anxiety. I basically ran through like the thought process or the life story with my math coach, and the whole time I'm just like twitching and fidgeting because I am not comfortable because they're digging, right? They're digging a lot, and you want to see that in these people because they're being honest. They're not being honest in like stuff. Alcohol. If you're not being honest,
Breakfast gravy.
if they're not being real vulnerable with you, you're missing something, and you're gonna find it when stress happens.
Yeah, like I said when we started, like it's literally a win for me if they cry during the motivational interview. Like I love it. And not because I want them to cry, but because I want them to be vulnerable. Because when you join our team, like our culture is so unique that we have those tough conversations, and that's why.
The first people to know that I was like, that Sarah and I were expecting a kid was Sam and Wes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the people that I'm calling. These people that you're inviting into your world, they're in your world. So they need to be the ones that, you may not be their best friend, but you have to create that relationship.
Yeah, and not even on leadership. Like I know my admin, I literally am hiring them because I have their back. So if I am taking them through this process and I wouldn't like literally jump in front of a train for them, I'm not gonna hire them because they're there to be in my world and I want to create a really big world for them. So not just our admin, but that's anybody on our team. So like when we hire people on the Varus network, we are literally their family. Like I love their kids. I love them. That's just kind of how it is for our culture. Your culture may not be that same way, but that's okay. You have to figure out what your culture is before you start hiring.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So it might be like the skeptical side of me, but is it possible for somebody to be so intelligent that they can completely smoke this test, like make themselves appear to be a really high fit and everything when they're not? And how do you weed through that?
I personally have never had that happen. I would say the biggest way to weed through that would be putting in those little test things in there. So like, yes, it may say that they're a really high fit for ops manager, but then every single time you come into they're coming into interview, put a test in there. Like, hey, before you come the next time, within 12 hours, I need you to email me your references. I need 5 references, 3 professional, 2 personal, something like that. So you see really quickly how they're gonna take direction from you. So that's what I do. If I have any skepticism about anybody, I usually add a little extra in there to see if they're gonna do it.
Gotcha.
And also, I do this a lot. So I find somebody on my team, Josh is my person, that if I am unsure about somebody, I'm taking this person to Josh and I'm like, hey, let me digest everything I've said, break it down for you, what we've talked about, like fight me on them.
I've sat in a lot of the second or third interview for 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get introduced as like, hey, I'm here for 5 or 10 minutes. Just wanted to see this person. So they don't think I'm leaving because I don't like them.
Yeah.
Give them that heads up right up front. I tend to be a pretty decent judge of character pretty quick, but I can also see if like Sam will dig into those points that she's concerned about right at the beginning of that interview. So then I can see my side of it real fast.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be anybody on your team, like bring somebody, like I'm more than happy to sit in on anybody's interviews. I do it quite often. Bring somebody in that doesn't know anybody about the person. That's key.
I think it's huge, especially as you get further along, because you can emotionally attach to these people. The last person that went through group and we said no, it's only happened twice. The last one, Sam, like, was in tears over it. She's like, I don't know what happened, right? Like, I 100% thought this was the person, and then all of a sudden the group interview happened and we're like, well, why did you bring this person to us?
Yeah,
And you just get so emotionally attached as the interviewer. Sometimes you got blinders on.
I will say
Sometimes
one
you
thing
have
that we are doing different with our defense now. So after the group interview, the way that we structure it on our team is we do group interview. I bring in people from the industry. So like if I'm hiring an admin, I may bring in Haven, or I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Me?
Yeah,
Bethany.
Bethany.
Sorry.
I'm gonna bring in other people that do that role that are not on my team. So I have some like third party. And then after the group interview, so we have people that everybody asks questions, and normally I would sit there and I wouldn't talk. Now I'm removing myself completely from the group interview. It makes them a little bit more comfortable, I think. And then me, I have no idea what's happened in the room, which is a little bit of anxiety for me, but it's fine. So then we come back in and we do the defense. So as soon as they leave, I'm gonna come back in, I'm gonna be in the hot seat, and I have to defend everything about that person of what they said. So like one time, somebody comes in, they're like, oh, this is a resume builder for me, her exact words. It's a resume builder. And I was like, okay, we haven't had that conversation. So immediately as she left the room, they were like, hey, she's only here for a short period. Like, explain that to us. And I couldn't explain it. So sometimes I walk in the room and I'm like, immediately, nope, they're gone. Like, I don't want them based off of what they said. But that defense is really, really important because they may find other things that came up of, you know, ISA, OSA, like, I'm trying to think of something, never had sales experience. So why would you want to hire them? Well, this is why, because they have a track record of this, this, and this, and this. So that defense is really important because one, it helps me, like, you do get really emotionally involved with these people. You've been through 8 hours of interview, and I'm not an emotional person. And there are some people that I'm just like, I love them. They're amazing. But I have to have somebody else come in to defend that because maybe I'm overlooking something because I love them so much.
I think Sam just focused on a good point or said the good point. And I don't know if she mentioned or noticed it or even realized it, but Seth, one of our ISAs, freaking murderer on the phones. His last job, he's never done anything in sales. His last job, he was essentially Toby from The Office. So he was like HR, but he would travel to different
Safety.
yeah, he was safety, we call him Safety Seth.
Yeah.
So he was a safety inspector or something, but he would travel to different like manufacturer or different warehouses and check them. Like, that's not a dude that's supposed to be good on the phones. Like, he's not supposed, but like, you dig in, and I don't know that his KPA was even great either. But as soon as you verify it and you figure it out, you take a little bit of time. You're like, okay, this guy's a professional. He's successful. He is driven. And it's, can he grasp and buy into the role? Then sure, why not give it a shot? And now he's one of our top performers the last
And
couple months.
that's why it's really, really, really important of like when it says up here, I keep using the wrong mouse, sorry. I brought my own mouse for my computer and I keep using this one. So like right here, when it says like, if this was in red, that I don't just dismiss them. And when I first started doing this, I literally thought red was bad. So I'm like, oh, red, they're not a good fit. Not true. Because in Seth's case, Seth is amazing at his job. He's one of our top performers, and he was literally like low medium for the role. Yeah.
My KPA says I'm a low fit for a solo agent or a rainmaker.
And all that is your natural responses indicate that. And Denver, he's our lead ISA, and he's taken the test 3 times because he's like, I'm gonna beat it this time. I'm gonna beat it. Has he not? How many times he made you send it to him to just like see if
I
he
literally
improves?
verified it like 4 times.
And every time it stays the same because that's his natural indications. It's not what you learn though. When you learn, it can be different. So at least if you're gonna send somebody the KPA, at the very minimum, verify it. At the very minimum, verify it.
And verify it too, because if one of these is off, so if my intensity was like a little bit lower, all of these would be off. Every single one of them. So you want to verify it because like this is mine. I'm trying to think of something like my structure actually is probably higher. I love structure. I can thrive in chaos, but I love structure. So I love systems, like that's my love language. So all of those things. So
The sixth level.
Yeah, the sixth one. The first is gifts. But yeah, so my structure probably is like a 3 over here. So that could mean that like my logical problem solving could be a bit, my assertiveness is probably actually off this chart, to be honest with you, but. So that's why I like to verify it. And I think you're not doing your people justice if you don't verify these when you're spending the time with them. Even though you've only had probably a 15-minute call with them, you're not doing them justice if you don't verify it. Unless, yeah, another step that I take too is I stalk them on social media.
That's my favorite thing in the world.
I literally, before I even call them for the phone interview, I am finding to see if we have mutual friends. And I'm literally asking them, I'm like, hey, I see you're friends with Nicole Migliazzo. How do you know her? And I do this because when Wes and Josh hired me, Wes did this to me. And I literally was like stopped in my tracks. I'm like, who is he talking about? Like, why am I friends with that person? And then I had to like think about it. But it was probably the best question I've ever been asked of, hey, how do you know this person? Because some people are just friends with people to be friends with them, so.
I think it also shows that you're investing time into them. Like that person goes, holy crap, they actually care. Like this is important to them enough to where they went and found me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
Well, also it goes with a culture fit too. You want to check their posts just to make sure that it's going to fit well with.
We have a social
That we
media
dealt
policy on the team.
Yeah, that's really important. We have a social media policy on our team. And if you, we had to start doing that for a reason. But with the society that we have today, it's very, very important that.
You stole your social media policy
you
for the
did.
Market Center.
You did.
Because we had to start using it too.
Yeah.
Even
I
though
don't-
1099 agents, I mean, you still have to represent our culture.
I don't,
Eric, can it be?
yeah, I don't care what anyone's like beliefs are. It's just not my, it's not my place to care.
Yeah.
But I care about my business, and I changed barbers. And a lot of the things that he would say, like deep down inside, I agreed with. But how he was saying it and the way he was making people feel, I was like, I can't be tagged at your shop anymore. Because those tags get on my Facebook's connected to my business. It's not worth it to me. And that's essentially where, like, that's how our social media policy is based off of.
Did you have a conversation with your barber about it? Just a follow-up question? Okay.
Yeah, we talked. I'll give him credit because he's not usually the type of person that's like, I respect that. He was like, I get it, dude. I was like, okay, cool. So,
And if I see anything that's questionable on their social media, when I bring them in, I'm talking to them about that. I'm like, hey, like, I don't care what your beliefs or your values are, but talk to me about this. Like, why are we posting this on social media? Because I want to know, like, if I bring them into our world, what kind of person they're going to be. Like, are they a good human?
yeah.
I feel like it's also important because if they're leaving your world too, how they react to things or tough conversations.
It's part of our social media policy too. As soon as they leave, everything related to our business has to be gone. They, instead of it saying like, used to be employed by Veris, it's gone completely.
Gotcha.
Life story interview. Can you kind of go through a couple of how you kind of run that and rate that?
So,
Hey, Abby, online, will you type out your email really fast? Because you had asked for a question to get sent. So if you want to type out your email, then that way I can grab that.
all right, I'll just do it. So when I do life story, I do it on like a board or a sheet of paper. So I want them to see it so they can like visualize what I'm seeing. I don't know where they. All right.
Thanks, Abby.
Depending on like age or like where they're at in their life, it will depend on where I'm starting. So I'm gonna pick on Josh again. And since Josh is like old, just kidding. Just kidding. Josh used to be the oldest one at Linton Keats, so that's why I always call him old. He's not the oldest one anymore.
Thank you, Dan.
So
Dan.
because of Josh's just age and what he's been through, I'm gonna start with college. So, and even though I'm starting with college, I'm still gonna touch on like some of the beforehand stuff. I wanna know, like, have you lived in Springfield your whole life? Things like that. So I know a lot about Josh, so I'm gonna try not to like just write things down. All right, and when I'm doing this, I tell them they can tell me as much or as little as they want. I want them to be comfortable, ultimately, but I also want them to like give me the details. So, all right, Josh, Tell me about where you grew up.
I've been in Southwest Missouri since I was 5. Springfield area, Springfield Republic, kind of that whole thing. I was born in Florida, moved here with family when my dad retired from the Navy. So grew up here, and then out family's land and farms and stuff like that in the area.
Okay, and then you went to Kickapoo, right?
Yep, went to Kickapoo, graduated in 2008. Went through that whole Southwest Springfield area, pretty much my whole school life.
Where did you go to college at after Kickapoo?
Graduated from Kickapoo and went to Evangel. Played baseball there for a few years.
To 2012?
Yep, graduated in 12 and a half. Had to go back for summer school.
All right, talk to me about baseball.
Yeah.
You played all 4 years at Evangel?
Played 2 years at Evangel. I figured graduating with a 2.1 GPA probably wasn't the best of my interest. It's a really expensive debt to just barely skate by in school. So played 2 years, decided to focus on school.
What did baseball teach you?
So nothing at Evangel, really. It taught me that I really didn't respect the coach and program at the time, but really at Kickapoo was kind of where I feel like I was taught the most about being a man, what it takes, about what it means to have responsibility on you and providing and being, I think really being responsible for other people. Baseball is a weird sport where it's a team sport, but it's very individualistic. My team's always counting on me, but they don't really have any input on what I do a lot of the time. So, yeah.
All right, so from Evangel, what was your like major job? So I always ask major jobs because depending on their job history, they could have went to Domino's and then Pizza Hut and then ended up at Bass Pro, because I know he went to Bass Pro.
Yep. So before Bass Pro, I had I detailed cars and was a shop manager for I can't even think what it's called, Elite Automotive. So I started doing that in high school during Christmas break and summertime, just kind of as a summer job. And then once I went into college, I kind of did the same thing, managed the shop, oversaw payroll and order fulfillment over our 2 locations. So I did that mainly during breaks in high school or in college, but I'd step in when they needed help and stuff after school or whatnot. Then.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
So it almost feels like they're verbally saying what they put in their resume. Work history, education history.
Yes, basically, yeah, and
You're gonna be able to get more emotional depth than what somebody's gonna give you in their resume a lot of the time. It's a little bit different now with Sam because she does know, like every question she's gonna ask me, she knows the answer to right now. But if I said something that caught her off guard, right? Let's say the detail shop. I was like, yeah, I managed 3 or 4 people. Oh, cool. Tell me about that. What does that mean? What does that look like? Right? She's gonna dig a little bit into those things that
and typically, so I don't dig until I get done talking. So like him, I don't want to interrupt him. So like he talked about shop manager. I had a few things I could have asked him about shop manager, but I'm going to come back to it because I don't want to interrupt him. I don't want to interrupt like his thought process. And 2, like I do it on a sheet of paper, like where he can see it, and then I take a picture of it, because once we're done, I'm going to go back to his resume. And if something doesn't line up, like if the timeline doesn't line up, so say the years, I don't really look at that. It's more so of like, okay, you forgot this major job on your resume. Why? Like, do you not want me to call them for job history? Or like what happened? And I'm also asking, why did you leave? So like, we haven't gotten to that, but like detail manager, I would ask him, why did you leave this job? Like, were you unhappy? What happened? Same thing. Like once we get to Bass Pro, I would be asking that too.
Gotcha.
I just don't like to interrupt them. I let them talk. So you'll see me like,
So this first part is just kind of monotonous
get
You're gonna go
through
through the motions, then
it.
you're
Basically,
gonna go back.
you're loading your gun, right? You're just like figuring out what ammo you have to ask them questions on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so,
Shop manager, then I kind of job hunted really, kind of figured out really what I wanted to do. Worked at a car lot for a little while, in sales there. That was only 3 months. Realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and that's when I applied and started working for Bass Pro. At first at Bass Pro, I was in their sales department for boats. I kind of always liked sales, interacting with people, buying in, believing in a product, and then being able to provide it for somebody. I think that's what attracted me to car sales. First of all, I know you're in control of your money and how much you work, but at Bass Pro and the boat sales, that wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't commission based, it was hourly. So I looked for something different, more of a career change. And that's when I applied and moved over to a loan officer or a loan processor through their finance department. And I was there for the last 3 years.
all right, so you're at Bass Pro from what years?
2013 to the beginning of 2018. It was really like 4 years, 4.5 years in total.
And then you went, well, Presser, you went to commission or you saw hourly?
It was hourly plus commission. Yeah, you got bonuses based off of your sales of products, warranties and life insurance and gap insurance and stuff like that.
Yeah, so why did you like doing that over the car sales? Because they're very similar.
Yeah, the car sales was, I mean, everybody has that, negative connotation of a used car salesman. And it was very, very accurate. It was a 10 to 12 hour day, 5 days a week, potentially 6 days a week if you weren't on goals. And as a new salesman, it was kind of difficult to be on goal. But I just really didn't like the culture, the toxic environment that was there. Yeah, I just think that it wasn't necessarily the environment I wanted to be in long term. Money was great, but the environment wasn't there.
What were your goals at the car sales?
Starting out, it was 10 a month. This was after training, guys. The first training month, it was 6 or 8 or something like that. Yeah.
I asked that because I want to see what he represents as a hard goal or whatever he said. Because I want to know that, so like I'm interviewing Josh as our director of sales. We're going to make this up. I want to know what work he's going to put in to hit that goal, because director of sales, you're over all of our agents. You pick up the slack when the agents, if we lose an agent, our goals don't change. We're still closing 850 units this year. He's gonna have to figure that out because he's the director of sales. So I just wanna know what he thought was like too much work and if like that aligns with.
Yeah.
So if he would have told me, oh, I only work 4 hours a day and they expected me to blah, 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 or like this would have been 20, but like, okay, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
it
goals.
still sucks with what you told me
Yeah,
about.
the goals weren't the hard part there. That's for sure. I hit goal every month and just didn't enjoy the environment.
What were your goals at the loan processing?
That was a little different. We had goals based off of percentages of your files. We didn't necessarily have direct control over the amount of files that we handled. We were given those. We were basically sent through a online system. They sent loan applications to us from the dealership. So really depending on how much the dealership had, but every Monday we'd walk in to probably 100 to 125 loan applications. Those would get split up by everybody. So first thing in the morning, I would walk into like 10 on Monday, but your goal was 40% conversion on selling back-end product. And each product had different goals just based off of the cost in states, because some life insurance was gonna be, $1,000 for a 5-year policy, and then some states life insurance for 5-year policy was like 10 grand. So those people really didn't have a goal to sell it, because it's not realistic to ask somebody to sell a $10,000 life insurance policy on a $20,000 boat. But yeah, those goals I was always a top performer there, on the sales side of it, because I knew it directly related to the money I took home.
So you are
Sorry,
interviewing, yeah, sorry.
I know I caught part of this from Family Reunion. Gary Keller went over money. So do you go over what his income was for any of that kind of timeline?
I typically don't.
Those get hit
And-
a lot in the 4 quadrants though.
Yeah, money is a big portion of the 4 quadrants. Part of the reason why I don't is just because like, I never have, I can't really tell you why. I just think like getting into the nitty gritty of money can sometimes be like really weird with people.
We talk a lot about it in the 4 quadrants. though.
Yeah.
That's its own quadrant.
And they also just come up, like, that's the reason why they left.
Yeah, if he was to tell me I left because I wasn't making enough money, then I would ask how much were you making and what were you expecting to make?
Mhm.
So like with sales, like I'm interviewing a person right now for ISAOSA. He told me he left a job because he wasn't making enough money. I'm like, okay, what were you making? He broke it down hourly, and I was like, what would have kept you there? Like, what could you have made and what would have kept you there? Type of thing. So it just kind of comes up naturally, like with my probing questions.
A lot of people, if somebody's not afraid to tell you they left a job for money, it's really easy to ask them the question. But like in the situation of like the car lot, I was like, money was the best part. It was the only reason I stayed there for 3 months, let alone,
Yeah.
and not to mention, you're working as much as they have you there. You don't spend any of it. So it's great, especially right out of college. You get to party real hard.
Yeah, I found if I want to keep them, like if they, like he's naturally started talking about money, then I would ask about it. But if I want to keep them comfortable, I don't talk about money.
Hmm.
Because you can tell really quickly whether they're okay with it or whether they're like,
It's shut down.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What other, so you kind of started off with where did you grow up, then you went to major jobs, and then you kind of broke that down, just let them kind of talk and go through the timeline. Then you went back and kind of said what your goals are or were for that
Mhm.
position. You just kind of go through that process. Is there another section or layer that you're
Usually
gonna hit
it's-
on next?
We'll ask how they were at hitting those goals. Were they successful or not? Which like I just mentioned it anyways. Yeah, I mean, more times than not, I mean, we've had people that have, car lots a really popular place for us to hire from for some reason, because it's a miserable job. If you have anybody working at a car lot, it's not fun. Generally speaking, it's not. They'll let you know what their goals, if their goals were an issue. We've had a lot of people say like, it was just really hard to hit goal. And you ask them, what were your goals? I had to sell 10 cars a month. Right now, that may be hard just because there's no cars to sell, but in a normal environment, you're going, okay, that's 2 cars a week on a lot where people walk in, like Saturdays, you would sell, like, there's a Saturday I sold 4 cars on one Saturday. Like there's 2 weeks of sales done, right? Like I could take off for a week basically at those numbers. So it really wasn't that hard. But you get to learn by what people give you. They'll accidentally tell you too much sometimes.
I always touch on accountability as well, no matter what role they're with. So no matter what role they're with, I ask goals because we are a goal-driven industry. Every team has goals. And then I ask, how were you held accountable to those goals? So I know they touch that in thought process interview, but I want to know directly how each employer held them accountable. And then I'm asking them, like, did that accountability work for you? Like, was that your ideal accountability? So, like, for example, if Josh was to tell me they held me accountable by yelling at me each week in a 411, I would have been like, okay, is that how you want me to hold you accountable if we get together on this job? And if he says no, then I know that no. And the expectations portion of it goes through a lot of that too. So let me scroll down.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Just as a time thing.
So the expectations portion, sorry, I want to touch on this really quickly. When you're getting references, if you're not having them sign this, have them sign this. So this is where basically like they're giving you permission to call anybody. And when I call them, I can ask, I'm always asking for, hey, do you know 2 or 3 people that I can call? Typically they'll give me one. So like if I was to call your previous employer, when I'm talking to them, I would say, hey, do you know anybody that I should talk to that also has an experience with when? Typically they'll give me one person. It helps you go down that line. So I'm asking to go 2 or 3 people deep. It's really important. Because typically when you're calling references, they've told them you're calling. So like when I got hired with LCarry, I like called my references and I was like, hey, they're going to be calling. Just so you know, like you're gonna get a call. When they know that, typically they're like, oh, they're gonna speak good of you, you know?
You're also not gonna put somebody on your references that isn't gonna speak highly of you.
Yes, exactly.
But your references they may not know their relationship, they just may know that you're part of it, right? Or they know you.
Yeah, and then probably one of like the most important pieces of this once you get through it is the expectations conversation. So you're going through, how do you win with them? How do you lose with them? How do you be like honesty, things like that? Same thing. I'm going to tell them how you win with me, how you lose with me. So if you're not honest with me, you're going to lose with me. And then you have them initial it. I keep these literally forever. So people I've hired, how long I've been with the team now? 3 years ago. I still have this for them. I have a file on my computer. All of it is their KPA, their expectations, their 4 quadrants, everything. So that way, like I recently just had to pull this out with one of my admin and I had to be like, hey, when I hired you 2 years ago, this is what we talked about. This is how I win with you. I'm losing with you and I'm still having these same conversations. What's up? And so we literally went back through it. She's changed. I've changed. Things change. So I like to keep it because you never know what's happening. Well, I think we have like 3 minutes. Any other questions?
I have a question, but it doesn't really relate to this exactly. It does,
Yeah,
but
you're good.
so I know there's you and then you guys have quite a few admins. How does that look? Like, what do you guys have admins specifically do?
Yeah, so our admin, we have listing managers and transaction coordinators, and then we have an ops manager. So like our org chart, it's like me and Monica, because with the merge, you know, there's 2 of
Right,
us.
yes.
Sam, we have an ops manager who kind of is like the middle man
Okay.
and then our listing managers and TCs are down here. So TC listing
Who's
manager.
your ops?
Jess Pruitt is our ops manager. She's virtual, kind of.
She
So
used to live here and then moved away, but
Yeah.
she's high talent, so it was like, you can work from St. Louis and.
Yeah. So kind of what do you do that's different than Jess?
So Jess is doing file updates with these people weekly. So when I go into 411s with them, when Monica and I do, she's already like talked to them and digested like, hey, what problems are you experiencing? Things like that. And if she can't help solve the problem, it goes up to Monica and I. And then in our 411s, we're like, okay, we're experiencing, I'm making numbers up, but 15% fall through with one agent. What's going on?
Right.
Or whatever it may be. And then she is checking accuracy of like CZU in our systems. We use CZU, so that's why I said that, but.
Sam and Monica are definitely vision casting for the ops department.
Okay.
So they're creating goals for the ops department that the ops can control. So percentage of file that they're getting reviews on or referrals on, or creating events. And, you know, they also have Amanda, who's our marketing director. She's, so they also work with her on vision casting more of bigger picture rather than the actual particular files that they're working on.
We've been kind of talking about it, like, of course, I'm the only admin, we have an ISA, but I'm doing it all right now. And they're like, when do and what do we give another, you know what I mean? So that's kind of.
Yeah.
Second question, where did the name come from for the merge? Just curious.
So we sat.
Wrong conversation.
No,
I have no idea.
it was 10 a.m. and no one had been drinking as far as I'm concerned.
I'm just kidding.
We looked for names forever.
Yeah.
So then with the
MREC guidelines.
MREC and the NAR guidelines about names.
Yeah.
We wanted to go with something completely bland. I wanted nothing more but to get my name off of it. I'm not the recognition person. I hate it personally. Like, I have no problem with the people that like it. It's just me. I don't want anyone to know my name. But we sat there and searched and searched and searched names, and every name we wanted and we liked was gone. So then we started taking the names that we liked and looking for them in different languages. So this means real
Oh,
in Latin.
okay.
And then it's got like lineages to like integrity and a couple other things. So
I'm like, how did they get that?
honestly, we finally sat there and Dan was on his computer and he was just typing in every name that we came up with, or like words. We were literally just saying words, and everything was taken. And so finally, one of them had like translator down below, and it happened to pop, and we're like, Ferris kind of falls off the tongue, and so it just stuck.
Sweet.
So random, but
Cause I'm like putting your guys' names together. I'm like, no, that's none of
we almost
that.
were a Hulk.
We were not almost.
We were not almost Hulk.
Seems like
We
you're
still-
Tell our group chat that though. It's
Our,
kind
our,
of-
yeah, our ownership group chat is still called Hulk, so, yeah. That would have been the worst thing ever. And some ugly colors too.
Was this helpful? Was this hurtful?
Yes.
Thank you,
Good,
Sam.
thank you.
Well, I will put my email and my phone number back up here. And if you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to call or text me anytime. I'm kind of an open book, so I'll just give you all the details.
Yeah, our team's not really afraid to share stuff.
No, we're not.
We, especially like anybody who came from LKRE side of things, all we've ever done, and we're so honest about it, is we just R&D'd everything. And we R&D'd it from Dan and from Adam, and we're so thankful for them, so we're more than happy to give back when we can too, so.
Yeah, I know we didn't really talk systems, so if you have system questions about like either when you bring them on or whatever, email me or call me. I will literally share whatever I have with you. So my onboarding checklist, my